Tommy, you gonna start that Zoom?
Sorry.
We all.
Yeah, you did say something. So birthday spirit too.
You're bathtub? That's the room. I thought about wearing an ugly sweater today. I don't know how that would go.
What? You know, other girls, she brings a little bit next year. Oh, all by yourself?
You do it all the
Pretty
time.
much. I don't count the times that you come while we were all
I see
asleep.
you later. I'll be here today. Whatever that day you come back to work that Wednesday.
Oh,
Sometimes I can walk in there, I'm like,
otherwise I'll be more.
Right.
Yeah.
Take that day.
An arm wrestle for it.
ooh, okay. I was about to say, we're gonna go to 5 to 6. Which I typically don't like. Yeah, them times. I mean,
I mean, it's not meaning like that, but. I mean. Right, that's the bad thing. He, I know.
He was giving me the look. Yeah, no, I want to
Like, wait, come on,
apologize that I haven't emailed you that stuff.
Wait on board now?
Where are you?
Huh? He's just talking to me. You know, people like me, Gio.
Well, I'm trying to still, I'm trying to think of why he ain't here talking to you. Hey, I came. No, I want to see this.
Recording in progress.
Got the live stream, Tommy?
We'll probably start doing a little practice, guys, when you call the meeting to order. You may want to go ahead and just do a roll call.
Okay, you guys working on it? Okay.
Got following council working, and then we have on the record.
You might be doing it upstairs.
Yeah, Ashley called. Ashley called me. She said he wants to stream.
Oh, they're gonna stream it? Okay, then we don't need
You
to.
may want to double check on that, she did call me and say.
Okay, I don't have her number, I got, what's his name? Oh, he's on vacation. Andy. But if Ashley told you she was gonna do it, she's cross-trained, so. Then we're good to go.
Yeah. Ready? I'd like to call to order the December 11th, 2023 Richland County Special Called Planning Commission meeting. Staff, please confirm the following. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, a copy of the agenda was sent to the news media, persons requesting notification, and posted on the bulletin board located in the County Administration Building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, staff. Staff, can you please take attendance for today's meeting?
All right, Yonke,
Here.
Frierson, Johnson.
Here.
Johnson,
Stepped out.
Duffy,
Here.
Metz,
Here.
Durant,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Sirks,
Here.
Grady.
Here.
Thank you, staff. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the December 11th, 2023 special called Richland County Planning Commission meeting. As planning commissioners, we are concerned residents of Richland County who volunteer our time to thoroughly review and make recommendations to County Council. Our recommendations are to approve or deny zoning map amendment requests. Per Title VI, Chapter 29 of the SE Code of Laws, Planning Commission may also prepare and revise plans and programs for the development or redevelopment of unincorporated portions of the county. The county's land development code rewrite process conducted this past year and passed by County Council is an example of this. Once again, we are recommending body to County Council, and they will conduct their own public hearing and take official votes to approve or deny map amendments and text amendments on a future date to be published by the county. County typically holds zoning public hearings on the fourth Tuesday of the month. Please check the county's website for updated agendas, dates, and times. This is where I usually say, please take note of the following guidelines for today's meeting. We have a small crowd in here. I'll just abbreviate, please silence cell phones. Audience members may come and go as needed. An applicant who would be here to speak would take 2 minutes and give their name and address. no demonstrations, and please don't voice displeasure or frustrations. That's not the purpose of this meeting. So we're just going to continue on with item number 3, which is additions or deletions to the agenda or any amendments to today's agenda. Commissioners, staff, any changes to today's agenda?
Not from staff.
Commissioner, okay, here, none. And move on to item number 4, which is the approval of minutes from the November 6th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Do any commissioners have any comments or concerns regarding these transcripts? Okay. Hearing none, the chair makes a motion to approve the minutes unless there's an objection. Do I have a second? Second. With a second, staff, please take a vote.
All right, those in favor of the approval of the November 6, 2023 minutes, Yonke,
Aye.
Frierson,
Aye.
Johnson, Duffy,
Aye.
Metz,
Aye.
Durant,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Sirks,
Aye.
Grady.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, staff. We can move on to item number 5, which is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is an action item that allows the commission to approve road names and map amendment requests where the staff recommends approval and either no one from the public has signed up to speak against the amendment or no member of the commission is in need of further discussion on the request. Ms. Frierson, do we have any cases that no one has signed up to speak?
No one has signed up.
Okay. I see one item here, 5B1. I see staff recommendation of disapproval, so we will be discussing that. The chair makes a motion for the consent agenda to include just the road names today. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Metz. With that, staff, please take a vote for the consent agenda.
All right, those in favor of the consent agenda for just item 5A, Yonke,
Aye.
Frierson,
Aye.
Johnson, Duffy,
Aye.
Metz,
Aye.
Durant,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Sirks,
Aye.
Grady.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, staff. We can now move on to item 5B, our map amendment.
Yes.
Today. Yes.
We have 2 item 5s on the agenda unless there's a correction.
You're correct.
Good. There. Staff, can you make the change?
So, right, so with the change, item 5 which is identified as the chairman's report, would be item 6. The planning director's report would be 7. Other items for discussion would be 8 instead of 7. And the adjournment will be 9 versus 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Great. But
Mr. Chair, before we
Yes.
get to the map amendments for cases 5B1, I do believe that the applicant for that case may have come in just now. So he hasn't signed in, but he'll probably still need to sign in, but I believe the applicant is here.
thank you, staff. Let's continue with 5B1. Typically, staff fills us in on information on the site. There we go.
All right, the first item is case 22-003MA. The applicant is Jayden Patel. The location is on the south side of Killian Road. Tax map number is 14600-03-05. The applicant is requesting to rezone 32.21 acres from rural, which is RU, to NC, which is neighborhood commercial. Staff's recommendation is for disapproval of this request. And that's mainly as the request is not consistent with the objectives outlined in the 2015 comprehensive plan. Speak specifically from the conclusion on page 3. The mixed-use corridor designation promotes smaller scale commercial business and service use types as the primary land uses. While the requested NC district is supportive of the mixed-use corridor designation of promoting suburban scale retail, the subject request is not located along a primary arterial and that would include both this section of Wilson Boulevard and Killian Road. So for this reason, staff recommends disapproval.
Thank you, staff. Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff?
Question.
Taylor?
Just to be clear, this portion of Wilson Boulevard, you said is not a major arterial, that is correct?
It's not a principal arterial.
Okay, and yes. Zoning classifications. I'll hold my question at this time. Or any remaining questions. The first question was answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Commissioner Frierson, can you please speak for the public? Announce the public who signed up to speak. Thank you.
Okay, we have one person who has signed up to speak, and that is the applicant, Jaitin Patel.
Please come on down and state your name and address. And then typically we give you 2 minutes.
Myself, Jatin Patel, and I'm the applicant, and I live in Blytheford on a New Cut Lane, 536 New Cut Lane, Blytheford, South Carolina. And 2 years back, I moved here, and for that 32-acre land, primarily we are planning to use as a small neighborhood commercial. That means that will support the surrounding neighbors for their day-to-day usage. That means if it is something like small kids education things like the Mathenesium or similar to that nature, or some small coffee shop, or maybe a little restaurant that people can come and grab easily in and out. So that kind of the small retail space we are planning to develop upon further. I think that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments? Commissioners, this is now on the floor for discussion or any further questions from staff.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Grady.
All right, thank you. Question for staff on this one. So as I understand the discussion, the mixed-use corridor, as articulated, is for suburban scale commercial development, I believe is the word that was used. But so seemingly neighborhood commercial would be a designation that would fit that general category of activity. But you're saying that because it's not a primary arterial, that was the primary reason for staff disapproval. So I feel like this is kind of a, how do I want to put this, sort of a catch-22 situation, because it's designated as a mixed-use corridor, but because it's not a primary arterial, you're recommending against development that seemingly is consistent with the goals of the mixed-use corridor. So I'm confused as to what sort of development would be recommended for approval in this, for this kind of parcel.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Grady. And understand, I totally understand your question. It is actually part of the discussion we had as a staff also. But again, I want to make sure I point this out for everyone here and who's listening. We've identified as a staff's recommendation. What we're essentially saying is, here's a reminder of the comprehensive plan that was eventually reviewed and recommended by the Planning Commission, and ultimately approved by County Council. So it's more of a reminder of, hey, this is what the comprehensive plan says. It's not a staff's opinion as to whether it fits. So what we do is we'll read through this and we'll look at the wording. And if it doesn't meet all of the criteria and the guidelines that is established for each of these designations, we will recommend. I don't necessarily disagree with, so from more of a personal standpoint, from a staff standpoint, I don't know if I necessarily disagree with that. Mr. DeLage and I, we kind of had that same discussion, because when we were looking at Killian, we started on Wilson Boulevard and we went all the way to basically 77. And going from that, mainly from 77 coming west, you will see that's more of a heavier commercial in that area. You know, a lot of the car dealerships, the Walmart, and I believe even there's a small section as that portion of Killian Road starts to go from a 4-lane to a 2-lane, in which y'all have had a few rezoning requests come before you, and I think those are still being looked at by county council. And then you run into another section where the roads are more of a 2-lane, and within that area, it is really mostly residential. But, you know, the question just becomes, once you get to this particular section of Killian Road, and it has been identified as a mixed-use corridor, you know, the question is, as we have a more, you know, normally when this is done, we've always used the term broadly painted, where some of these go. But, you know, now we get a chance to kind of focus in on an area, and you can kind of make a determination. One, is that the recommendations of the planning commission, are those something that we can still agree upon? I mean, not the planning commission, the comprehensive plan, that we can still agree upon. And even though these aren't necessarily identified as principal arterials along Killian and Wilson, again, as you were kind of alluding to, does it make sense for this particular zoning request to be approved? And going forward, looking kind of at the big picture.
If I could ask a follow-up question, and I understand this might be a question you're not able or willing to answer, would it be your characterization to say that because of the response you just gave, that the comprehensive plan and the future land use map are not mutually compatible? That there's an inconsistency where one piece of it is saying one thing, another piece of it is seemingly saying another thing, and that they lead to a logical problem? Or is that a too broad of characterization, do you think?
Maybe. Again, you know, when you look at this code when it was adopted, the comprehensive plan, when it was adopted in 2015, of course, you're looking kind of at future land use. So maybe the intent was that this area would have grown during this time. Maybe the roads would have been improved. Maybe they would have gotten a different categorization. So it's just kind of hard to tell when you're kind of looking at it more. You know, we're looking at it now, but what does the future hold for this particular area? And will it catch up to, you know, to the development? And which in such, maybe some of the designations and the guidelines and recommendations will actually be more appropriate with how it's developed in that area. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Grady. Commissioner Metz?
Yeah, all right, so question, and this may be getting to the weeds about this site. So what does this look like with the new code that we just passed? Like, what would it be categorized now? And then if we were to change it to this zoning, you know, what would that zoning look like now going forward?
So, under the current, it's currently zone rural, and based on its acreage, if it's not rezoned, it will become HM, the homestead zoning designation. If you recommend approval, and of course it goes forward to council and it gets approved as a neighborhood commercial, the equivalent of that for the new land development code would be mix U one, which is MU1. Right. Neighborhood, yeah. MU1, which is neighborhood mixed use.
Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
under that MU1, substantively, what does the difference in terms of, based on the intended use, between what he's requesting and what that MU1 would become?
Unfortunately, I don't have a table that kind of just gives an outline gives a comparison between the two, but they're very similar in the uses. Essentially, you know, kind of elaborate, very, very similar as in allowing more smaller scale, more neighborhood-oriented type businesses versus the larger scale businesses. And so that kind of goes into that discussion that we had earlier. We're talking about from when you're on 77 on that portion of Killian, you know, you have more of your heavier commercial, even some levels of industrial along that area. But as you start going west and get toward the Wilson Boulevard, maybe that heavy commercial is not appropriate and neighborhood commercial would be. So that's one of the differences between, the neighborhood and the general commercial and what the new zoning designation would allow.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Johnson? Yep. Good questions. My comments for this area is, from experience being up here, the residents in this part of this stretch seem to always look for a balance where there is denser commercial activity along 77, and then it seems to get lighter as you get to Wilson Boulevard. So that's what I have thinking in my head right now, how to find that balance. Thoughts from my fellow commissioners?
Question.
Yes, Commissioner Taylor?
Based on what's on the screen right now, the gas station on Wilson Boulevard, what is that zoning designation?
Neighborhood commercial. Neighborhood commercial.
It'd say Wilson Boulevard is not a principal arterial, correct?
Correct. No, with the understanding, I believe that gas station is at that location has been there for quite a while. So we'll probably have to go back and do a little research as to when that zoning took place.
And a question for staff, still relatively new to the game, so trying to understand all the nuances, but like a primary or principal arterial, can a road become one? Is that similar, like the Leesburg Road project, that widening project? I don't know if it was a principal arterial before, but based on that widening, does that start changing the classification? Is it any one thing that would change it to or is it a combination of things?
That's a great question. I'm gonna turn that over to Mr. DeLage.
Okay.
So my understanding from past conversations is specifically with like hardscrabble, widening and improvements don't always mean that it's going to change to a different designation, but it could. It just depends upon kind of the scope of the improvements. Yes, and that would be the state SCDOT making that determination.
And excuse me, you mind elaborating a little bit? We have one case, so sorry. But it goes along with, I think it's kind of along the lines of Mr. Grady was asking earlier. Well, one of the things that we present to you, we present to you the information that we have before us. So again, we look at the comprehensive plan, what is designated. That's just what it is. And as Mr. DeLage was saying, we will run across where we may recommend against or just point out what the current designation of a road is. But again, that's not based on what staff is finding or doing. It is based on what we have, what the state of, South Carolina Department of Transportation has identified that road as. So maybe over time, as Mr. DeLage may have alluded to, it may change, but that's something that they would need to do, and then we would then kind of follow along with that.
Staff, commissioners, other comments?
Chair, I have a motion.
Yes, Carson?
I move that we advance case 22-003MA to County Council with a recommendation of approval. And in that this is inconsistent with staff recommendation, we're supposed to give a rationale, right? Okay, my rationale is that the parcel under consideration does not even though it does not fully comply with the parameters of the 2015 comprehensive plan, the reality is that that plan was written some time ago, and the particular parcel and in that area, the characteristics have changed, and it's not a perfect situation, but it does fit the mixed-use corridor, and the applicant should not be adversely affected by that inconsistency.
Thank you, Commissioner Frierson. We have a motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Taylor. With that, it's up for the staff. Take a vote, please.
So we have a motion for approval of case 22-003. So a yes vote would be in support of the approval. Those in favor, Grady,
Aye.
Sertz,
No.
Taylor,
Aye.
Durant,
No.
Metz,
Aye.
Duffy,
No.
Johnson,
Aye.
Frierson,
Aye.
Yonke.
No.
That motion passes 5-4.
Motion passes. This moves forward to County Council as a recommendation of approval. That is our only map amendment today. So now we move on to item number 6, which is the chairman's report. I just want to give a big thanks again to all my commissioners for all your time and effort you invest each month in the commission, traveling and reviewing cases and participating and having thorough discussions like we did today. That's all I have for our chairman's report. So we can go on to number 7, which is the planning director's report. Staff?
You note under item 7A, the report of county council, which is found on page 9. Those were the actions taken by county council, I believe, from the November 16th zoning public hearing, which were primarily some of the cases that you heard previously, mostly from the November 6th planning commission meeting. And also, I guess I have the point, before we get to 7B, yeah, good conversation on the previous case. I'm just going to show you as we start getting into next year, looking at the comprehensive plan, if you kind of, take a look at some of the ones that we've come across where there's been some discussion, maybe like, well, there's a comprehensive plan, is that really appropriate at certain locations. So, we would make sure we take those things into consideration as we, go forward with the update of our of our comprehensive plan. Our next item is going to be 7B, this is for the presentation of the Olympia Mill Village Architectural Design Guidelines. The intent of this is we've adopted the, Capital City Mill District. Yeah, right. So we've adapted the Capital City Mill District Master Plan area. And so what you would have coming before you would be the architectural design guidelines for it. So you have, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Smith, Matthew Smith, who's going to talk to you about the new land development code. And there's a new section in there called Neighborhood Character Overlay, and how we will be able to kind of incorporate some of the master plans or some of the guidelines of some of the master plans into our current code. So essentially what it does, it gives us a little more teeth. But I'll turn this over to Mr. Smith.
All right, so the NCO, or Neighborhood Character Overlay District, is essentially an overlay, just like any other, where you have your basic zoning that has all its parameters, and then the overlay usually provides an additional restraints or regulations on top of that. Whatever the overlay doesn't cover, it would revert to the whatever designation of that zone would be. So if it's general commercial, but it has an overlay, the overlays, dimensional standards would supersede those. Unless otherwise, if they're not said, then they would revert back to the GC. So the neighborhood character overlay district in this case would be used as a way to protect neighborhoods that have architectural history or some other significance that can be protected. And a set of guidelines essentially can be made by using this, establishing setbacks, architectural styles, and anything else that the master plan would allow. And from there, depending on what neighborhoods want to do would be up to them. But again, whatever they establish and theirs is what they establish. But if they don't establish one of those things, say the exterior lighting or, building height, then it would revert back to the zoning code regulation.
Just one thing, a lot of times when we spend a lot of time and money adopting these master plans for areas. And there are a couple of words that typically we find in there a little problematic with trying to get these fully incorporated into these areas. Words such as should, may, those type. And so what happens, we'll end up with a master plan, and the master plan is great, but when it comes time to really get people to buy into it, to kind of follow those guidelines, it's not a requirement that they do it. So one of the things that this new overlay will allow is for us to, once we adopt master plans or we even identify other areas, to put these overlays in place to come up with more requirements for these areas to help follow the guidelines of those comprehensive plans, of the master plans that we have adopted. So with that being said, I'm gonna turn this over to Mark. Come on, say it with me, Mark. Riddle Hoover. You understand why I had to turn to him. Riddle Hoover. And he's going to kind of give you kind of a little presentation, a little bit of information about this, about the architectural design guidelines. We're as staff, we're still doing, looking at it just a little bit, but the expectation is that we'll be dropping these off, dropping these over to each of you sometime in late December. Worst case scenario will be the 1st of January, but the intent is really try to get it to you sometime in December so you'll have a chance to look at this. And then we will have this on an agenda in February for you to have a little more discussion. I'll need to check with our legal. I don't believe that you can actually take action on this until March 1st, because that's when that new land development code actually comes into play. But we'll at least have some time, and hopefully in February, for you to discuss, ask questions of staff, and hopefully we have it ready. So by the time we get to March, this will be ready to roll essentially. Mark?
Is this microphone on?
Both of them on.
Hello, I'm Mark Riley Hoover. I'm the neighborhood planner. And as Mr. Price and Mr. Smith went over, this is a document that we put together to utilize the neighborhood character overlay, which is a new provision for the new land development code. This document comes about as it was recommended from the Capital City Mill District Plan. That was a master plan adopted by County Council, I believe, back in 2016 as a joint project between Richland County and the City of Columbia, covering the mill villages that are Granby, Whaley, and Olympia. The first two, which are incorporated in the city, the Olympia neighborhood, which is unincorporated Richland County. And as part of that plan, it recommended the adoption of a architectural design regulations in order to protect the neighborhood character of that community. So last year, we commissioned consultants to put together an architectural design guidelines document. And like Mr. Price said, we're finishing up some staff edits on the document itself, and we'll be sure to get that to you as soon as all the staff edits are done. But just as a brief intro of what the document covers, it mainly goes through the history of the neighborhood to give you context of the significance. This is a neighborhood that is on the National Register of Historic Districts. And so the document covers kind of its history and why it's nationally registered, and then goes through and defines the different characteristics that will be regulated in the neighborhood, such as things like building massing, materials of the roof, sidings, locations of windows, doors, anything that had historical significance that allows the neighborhood to be a national registered historic district. And then from there, the document also puts together the actual regulations, the things that, any new builds, any rehabilitations, relocations, demolitions, and the regulations saying that certain materials must be used, certain building masses the building must be placed on a certain spot on the site, things like that. And using the document, it covers the type of materials, things that are appropriate for the neighborhood. And so this covers the contributing buildings within the neighborhood. There are some buildings that were not part of the historical significance period that has different regulations regarding it. But as far as any contributing buildings, they will fall under the regulations in the guideline document.
Anybody, any questions that you may have for staff?
As commissioners, if we have any questions. So regulations are all based off the time period that you're saying?
Correct. So there was a historical period for the construction of the neighborhood, which was a majority of the neighborhood was built in the turn of the century, early 1900s, with another small section that has different regulations defined for it because it was built in the 1940s as a separate set of designs.
Residents of the neighborhood, are they all part of the process of creating this overlay?
Yes, so they were participants in putting together the guidelines, and something we're also wanting to look into is as far as enforcing the guidelines, whether we can get residents involved in a commission that reviews these reviews any cases that come up that would apply to this overlay.
Questions? Yes, Commissioner Durant?
In presenting this to the neighbors in the neighborhood, did you face any resistance from any neighbors as to whether this should go forward or not?
Not during the putting together the document itself. They were actually big proponents of pushing to have this document created, and have been big proponents of trying to get it as adopted as soon as possible. So for the most part, we've gotten a lot of support for this overlay from the neighborhood residents.
And Mr. Durant, maybe to answer your question, I think it's going to be part of our due diligence is before we actually bring this before you, for you to take any action, that as a staff that we have some community meetings to actually present what it is that we'll be doing, which would include showing the actual areas. There will be a focus of the overlay district, but also to show what some of the criterias that will be part of the NCO will be to the communities.
We have a lot of active participants from that neighborhood come out to our meetings, so we want to make sure their voices are heard.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments to staff on this? Your report, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
It is that time of the year.
We'll move on to item number 8, other items for discussion, which is item 8A, election of officers. And we'll say, take it away, staff.
Yes, sir. Okay, again, like I said, it's that time of the year.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
under planning director's report items, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is, and I do not want to get into the weeds if not necessary, but is this correspondence relative to, was provided relative to something specific action that we've taken or just a general?
That was general email that the gentleman asked that this be presented to the planning commission. It is not required for any action that you're taking, and I don't believe it actually relates to any previous actions that the planning commission's had. There was a rezoning request that goes all the way back to COVID. So I'm not sure. I think Mr. Yankee, you may have been on, and Ms. Friars, I'm not sure. Mr. Taylor, I'm not sure if you were on during the COVID when we were doing a lot of our Zoom meetings. So there was a parcel that's kind of being related, that's related to this email that's being referenced. But as far as anything that the planning commission has done, recently or anything that's being requested, that is not the case. It's just information that was asked to be shared with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson, and thank you, staff. Again, this just, I want to commend you. You always send information to us as you receive them from the public. So it's one of many other emails that you've printed and given to us in the past. Thank you. Now, shall we go on to number 8? Right. Thank you.
All right, so now we're here for the election of officers for the 2024 year. Just gonna go back, at one time, we always did the election of officers, the first meeting of the year, so it would have been in February of that year. It was decided and really initiated by staff a couple of years ago to start having the elections at the last meeting of the year. That way, whoever would be elected as the chair and vice chair would have a chance to meet with staff, just go over, get an understanding of the whole process, and maybe even make certain recommendations. And it also followed in line with some of the other meetings that other commissions and boards and even council. Council typically has their elections in January, but they typically don't have any items until February. So there's still a little gap in between them doing the election process and actually doing business. So we're here now for the election of officers for 2024, and the first item is for the chair.
Question,
Yes, Commissioner Durant.
what are we supposed to do at this point, Mr. Price?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
So I was going to turn to Mr. Yankee.
Okay.
So in this particular case, you can elect someone or nominate someone for the position of chair. I think once we've received all of the nominations, then you would then vote on each of the candidates.
Mr. Chair, I have a nomination.
Okay, Commissioner Farson, yes?
The current chairperson, Mr. Chris Yankee, has conducted the meetings in an atmosphere of respect for the constituents that come before us and for each of us as commissioners. He's also maintained sincerity, and he's shown competence and a love for this position. The first term of any position can be challenging. I would love to see him remain and grow and continue to lead us. For that reason, I nominate Mr. Chris Yankee to be chair of the Richland County Planning Commission for a second term.
Want to second that motion?
Thank you, Commissioners.
Well, I think in this case, do we have any other nominees for chair? Okay, with that being said, we can close that nomination. And we can then, when we can vote, we'll take them, as they come. So for this particular case, we have a motion for Christopher Yankee for chair for 2024. And we also have a second. So those in favor, Yankee?
I accept. Thank you.
Frierson. Frierson. Ms. Frierson.
I vote yay.
Okay. Johnson.
Aye.
Duffy.
Aye.
Metz.
Aye.
Durant.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Sirks.
Aye.
Grady.
Aye.
All right, so that concludes. Mr. Yankee will serve as chair for the 2024 year. Planning
Thank you,
Commission year.
everyone.
All right, so the next position is for vice chair. Do we have any nominations?
Chair. I nominate Ms. Frierson for vice chair.
I would second that nomination.
All right, do we have any other nominations?
The nominations.
Okay, so that closes that. So those in favor of Beverly Frierson for vice chair, those in favor, I'm gonna go back. Yankee,
Aye.
Frierson,
Aye.
Johnson, Duffy,
Aye.
Metz,
Aye.
Durant,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Sirks,
Aye.
Grady.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes 9-0.
Bryce, I want a speech. I want people to tell me how much they love me. Or either give me gifts, either one. You know,
Commissioner Frierson, we greatly appreciate you and your time.
We actually love you, Ms. Frierson.
now we're talking. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the final position, and this is always one that we talk about every year, is for secretary. Typically, staff serves as the secretary for the planning commission. Again, I guess I speak for staff and we'll be more than honored to continue to do that. But if any members of the planning commission, if y'all would like to nominate a member of the planning commission to serve that duty, please feel free to do, and we'll continue to work with them.
I'd like to ask my commissioners, would anyone like to team up with staff and hold the title?
Mr. Chair, I see no reason to vary from past practice. It's been working very good.
I'll nominate staff for secretary. Any other nominations?
Okay. With that being closed, go ahead and take a vote. We have a motion for staff to serve as the secretary for the 2024 year. Those in favor, Yankee,
Aye.
Frierson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Duffy,
Aye.
Metz, Durant,
Aye.
Taylor.
I don't know if it was seconded, but I'll second it and say aye.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sirks,
Aye.
Grady.
Aye.
All right, thank you. I'm assuming y'all don't want to say nice things about staff, so we'll move on
We
to
great- we
we'll move on to
appreciate
8B
staff.
at this time.
I'll say something nice. One of them is an excellent baker, and the holidays are upon us. Yule logs,
All right,
cakes, etc.
Thank you, Commissioner Frierson.
all right, Tommy, get on it. All right, so Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. We'll move on to adopting the calendar, which is item number 8B. This is our 2024 Planning Commission calendar. Staff, can you please explain August to the group?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And before it goes into August, I'm gonna go explain our rationale for selecting some of these dates. Typically, the Planning Commission meets the first Monday of each month. There are some occasions when that first Monday follows a holiday. And so, a lot of people like to use that as a time for, maybe vacations. Also, we also want to make sure that any meetings are convenient for the public to be able to attend. So you'll see meetings such as, for example, September, with the Labor Day holiday, in which we'll move it. And with this year, we did not have to worry about July because that when the date falls in relation to the 4th of July. So August the 5th, you'll notice is highlighted, and the reason that's highlighted is because County Council typically doesn't meet or hold a zoning public hearing during the month of August. They also don't do it in January, which is why you don't see that meeting on there. But specifically for August, they typically don't meet to have a zoning public hearing. And so we've used that time to determine either if there's some additional business the planning commission wants to discuss, they can, but we hold all cases until that September. That way they just don't sit there, waiting for county council. But that's the reason why that's highlighted. That's almost a maybe on your agenda, that we may have that if needed, but not necessarily for any cases that would be recommended to county council.
Just to repeat it back then, staff, August 5th is kind of on there as a placeholder.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I do like keeping some time open for planning commissioners in August as some sort of training. We've done that in the past, and that's been awesome, put on by the staff. Thank you. I agree with what you're saying, skipping August 5th as needed. Any other comments from commissioners on the calendar?
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner Metz.
Staff, how set is that July 1st? So I feel like that's the time when a lot of people travel and leave that week, so just curious about that.
And with the, if you don't mind. I'm sorry, Tom, you could have pulled that up. Okay, and the reason why we chose that particular date was because the 4th of July was gonna fall on a Thursday, as opposed, and, that Monday would have been, we felt enough time, to have a meeting. However, this is more just a recommendation of staff as we've identified dates. If the planning commission would like a date to be changed, and y'all can, that's the reason why it's here before you, then that date can be changed to another time. And also, I think one of the things we were looking at with this one is if we didn't do it on the 1st and we moved it to the 8th, I think we kind of fall into that same issue where 4th of July is on the 4th, so everybody maybe just be coming back from an extended weekend. So my recommendation would be if you decide that the 1st of July is not a good day to have a meeting, to maybe move that to a Thursday, maybe the 11th, would be probably more appropriate.
What do we think, commissioners? Do we like that? Possibly moving July to the 11th.
I definitely do. I know right now I'll be out of the state that first week and, the 8th also. So I like the 11th.
So we make amendments as we go and then we could approve it?
I think you could discuss it. We can make those notes, and then you could just take it up with all of the changes that you've recommended.
Any concerns with July 1st going to July 11th, commissioners? All right, hearing none, I'm going to write into my calendar that changes from July 1st to July 11th, which is a Thursday. Commissioners, do we see any other dates of concern? I appreciate everyone helping me this past year, or this past December meeting. I do not see any conflicts for me.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Gray?
This is an issue that I've raised in previous years. I do have some concern about having meetings during traditional working hours as it certainly is something that could limit public participation and awareness of the Planning Commission and its work, particularly as we begin to discuss the upcoming revision to the comprehensive plan. And, to speak frankly, I think in previous instances where there were controversial decisions, I think it's fair to say that the demographic makeup of the people in the room was not representative of Richland County as a whole. So I would like to put up for discussion whether we wish to have these meetings at a different time rather than 3 p.m. or if the sense of the room is that we should maintain that.
Staff, what do you think about evening meetings?
Well, this question has come up before, and not just for the planning commission. We've actually, the Board of Zoning Appeals also had that discussion. And I think the City of Columbia actually has some of their meetings in the morning, if I'm correct. I think 9 a.m. in the morning. It is really up to you. As a staff, I will be here. The rest of the staff will be here, during that time, for these meetings. But again, that is, if you feel it's more appropriate to change the time, or you would like to, we, or as a staff, we will accommodate you to whatever time you decide.
I commend the staff for your long hours you put in, especially on the Tuesdays with county council meetings. I've attended those, and I now know how late they can go. But I'm up for this discussion and to hear comments from the group, morning or evenings or afternoon. Some of our meetings start at 3, but have gone till 6. It's just about getting good participation from the public so that people could be here.
Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Durant?
A move to morning meetings wouldn't accomplish the goal we're setting. That's still work time for most. I think we're looking at whether we want to start later.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay, I agree with Commissioner, get the name right, Grady. I have been here for the discussions, and I too am aware that when we have meetings in the middle of the day, we do, for the most part, make it difficult for folks that are working. So I would be in favor of our meetings being at a much later time in the day. Or early evening.
Staff, are there particular hours that would work for you and your team so that we weren't here too late?
Again, I much as I hate to say this, I would not worry about our convenience at this time. I think if you go by what what Mr. Grady had brought up, the intent of you changing times is really for the convenience of the public and for the citizens of Richland County to be able to come in. So with that being said, I mean, I think from this discussion, it's almost kind of defaulting to maybe a 6 o'clock time. You could do 5, but again, that still a lot of people getting off work, coming in. So, I mean, again, from a staff standpoint, we're here to whichever time you choose, but you're probably looking at somewhere between 5 or 6 o'clock for your meetings.
Staff, is that the typical start time for a county council meeting?
County council meetings are held at 6 p.m. Now, they do also have other committee meetings, but primarily the county council regularly scheduled meetings are held at 6 p.m.
Question.
Yes,
Is
Commissioner
that
Taylor.
later, 6 p.m., is there a time limit? Or do you see a need for one?
Kind of jump, maybe something that we can look at also is looking at your, the rules of procedures. For example, county council, they only allow 30 minutes a case. So if, 30 people showed up and you give everybody 2 minutes to speak, you typically aren't going to get everyone through. They would have to actually vote to waive their rules prior to that case coming forward. So there are some mechanisms in place to kind of have some control over it, to stop being here for an hour for one particular case.
And I've heard the same concern, and I think it's commendable for the group to consider that because the public does want to be here, not only to participate in discussions, but to hear whatever we have to present to them. So I'd definitely be in favor.
And also, commissioners and Mr. Chair, in some instances, even if the practice has been to allow the public to speak, each person for 2 minutes, if the crowd is great, sometimes it could be limited to maybe a minute per person. Have flexibility. The other thing is that for many instances, we won't have a huge crowd, but it is good to be mindful of the constituents first.
Staff commissioners, are we considering maybe a limit? I've seen county committee meetings that have a hard stop. Like if our meetings were like 6 to 8, would we be allowed to move cases to the next month if needed? But in 4 years I've been up here, our average meeting is usually hour and a half, 2 hours. There have been a few times that it's been up to about 3. But for everyone's families, as we are volunteers, is that something we would want to consider? Is that something we could even do?
I think those are things that you want to take up with your roles during that time. I think, and that's something that I think, if I'm correct, we need to be placed on an agenda for you to vote on. And so we need to put it down as an action item before we can actually talk about any specific amendments to your rules of procedure. I mean, right now, the only thing we have before us is the adoption of the calendar, so we should be looking at the dates and the times.
Setting a time frame of 6 to 8, that's more of a rule change.
I
than
think
a-
so, and I don't
okay.
know if you necessarily need to do that. Again, I think you're correct that typically the meetings aren't that long. I do believe that really, your discussion is actually probably one of the things that really kind of will extend the meeting more so than just citizens coming in to speak. And after a while, you pretty much have a good idea where the citizens stand and what they're going to say. But it's really part of your discussion on the cases that may extend it.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Question?
Yes.
So if we adopted a new time, would that decision need to be made tonight or this evening in preparation for a February meeting, or did Mr. Grady have a time in mind for when this new time would take place?
Well, since you asked, I mean, obviously we would need to adopt. I would assume we would need to adopt it today, at least for the February meeting. But yes, my thought was that we would adopt a later time, and I hear 6 o'clock being floated a fair bit for all meetings on this calendar.
Staff, I do see the line customarily meets on the first Monday of the month at 3 p.m. So we could strike the 3 and change it to a 6 based off of what I'm hearing from the group.
Yes.
And then have that apply to all the dates, as long as we're not going against our rules.
Correct.
Just in
Final
relation,
discussion, yes.
in relation to the time
Commissioner
of
Duffy.
in relation to the time of it, though, we don't want to be here till 9 or 10 p.m. at night. Ideally, if we start at 6, is there a way to bake that into the rules then, following this, or what do you think?
Yes, Commissioner Duffy. That was my suggestion with capping it at 2 hours, like a county council committee meeting is like typically 1 hour.
I think one of the concerns, let's say you cap it at 2 hours. And then we just happen to have one of those agendas where you have a number of cases and a number of citizens that come in and want to speak on this matter. So we're looking at maybe there are 2 or 3 cases left. The room is still full because everybody wants to speak, and you're going to tell them essentially, come back next month and we'll put you at the top and we'll take it from there.
That's a good point.
That's not
Mr.
a good
Price.
optic.
Good point. Thank you. No,
Yeah,
this is just
again-
our discussion period,
Again,
where we air out these concerns and questions.
I will say, for those of you who have served for a while on here, we very seldom have very long meetings. Over the last year and a half that we've had really long meetings dealt with the land development code rewrite. And those are a lot of discussions with more, even with the citizens that came in to speak, that really didn't extend it. It was really the discussion amongst the planning commission members that kept that going. So trying to, I mean, the way I'm looking at it, if you try to cap it at a 2-hour meeting, you really will be more or less penalizing yourself, probably more so than anybody else.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, there's another way that we could perhaps deal with it. I do agree, we would not want the optics of saying, okay, it's 8 o'clock, we got to get out of here. We don't do that. However, when there's an effective chair and we start to hear the same thing over and over, we don't say, naturally we don't say, we've heard enough, we get the point. But you can politely say something like, I'm not saying you recess the meeting, but you could just take a moment to say, we appreciate the comments, and if you have something new to add, you can, make certain polite suggestions along the way, and then some people who have signed up might say, thank you, my point has already been made. But it generally has not been a problem, and it does come with the skilled leadership of the chair. I mean, that's one of the things that's helpful, and it's generally not been a problem.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is it the case that staff needs to look to see whether moving the time and capping the time is consistent with the rules, and we vote on it at the next meeting, or is that something, do we vote on something today?
I think you could vote on it today, especially from a staff standpoint. We want to ensure that we've reserved the room for that time period. So you can take action on the time and the dates of the for your meetings for next year.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Commissioner Sirks.
quick question for staff, and I think I know the answer, but just in case, if we were to move to a 6 p.m. time slot, that wouldn't conflict with anything else that's normally scheduled for this room at that time?
That's what I'm saying. So what we'll do is we already have the room reserved for 3 p.m. For next year. I always send the calendar in advance just so we make sure we have the rooms and make sure there are no conflicts. But I'll do the same once y'all make your decision and vote on it. But I don't expect there to be any conflicts during that time. And if so, we will then bring that back to you. Because ideally, we're only looking at, we would need to get the February 5th meeting going. Because once we get to February 5th, if there are any other conflicts that come up, then we can vote on those particular dates at that meeting.
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner Grant.
Bryce, is there any issue with the building doors being closed at a certain time each day?
No, sir. Once we notify the deputies that are in the building that we will have a meeting until this time, it's very similar to what county council does. They're here until the meeting is over. So we'll just have to notify them, and they'll be able to man the doors in the building.
Staff, would you put a notice out to the public if we decide to move forward, the different change well in advance, so no one shows up at 3 o'clock on?
Yes, sir. I think we'll try to work with our PIO officer, I think it's the Office of Communications, and see if we can get something definitely on the webpage. And also, again, when the meetings are coming up, we put it in the newspaper, and we also post the property, so everyone will see that time.
Staff? I feel like this is a positive change for our commission, for the public. Shall we put this up to vote for the calendar? Scratching out 3 p.m. to 6 p.m.? I also put August 5th as a placeholder, but I can also just scratch that if you'd like, commissioners, staff.
I'm sorry, what was
For
that?
August 5th, should we just scratch that date out?
No, we'll keep that date.
Placeholder, okay.
Yes, sir.
Last comments about the time change or the dates, commissioners? Okay, hearing none, the chair makes a motion to approve the 2024 Plan Commission calendar with these changes. Customarily meets on the first Monday of the month at 6 p.m. February 5th, March 4th, April 1st, May 6th, June 3rd, Thursday, July 11th, August 5th is a placeholder, September 5th, which is a Thursday, October 7th, November 4th, and December 2nd. Do we have a second on approval of the calendar? Second from Commissioner Durant.
Question.
We have can I take a question after a second? Sure, I'll take a question.
Is it, it may be a moot point, and I'm cool if everybody says don't worry about it. But we don't customarily meet at 6. Do we want to keep customarily, or? I don't know, that's just something, that is not accurate. We don't customarily meet at 6, if that sentence stays in.
Commissioner Taylor, that is true. We can strike the word customarily. Meets on the first Monday.
What's that?
Well, customarily covers us for the Thursday. Because, yeah. Staff, what do you think?
No, I mean, I get your question. Again, yeah, we do, but anything could occur in which we may need to make some changes. And what it does is just doesn't lock us in. Somebody said, no, this is what you said. We're just letting them know that we typically meet on the first Monday in this case, at 6 p.m. Anything could occur that may require us to either have a special call meeting, on another date, and also maybe another time. Typically, time doesn't change for the meetings, but it's usually the date that changes.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All right, so we have a motion and a second from Commissioner Durant. Staff, please take the vote.
All right, those in favor of the motion to approve the 2024 calendar with the time change to 6 p.m. and the July 1st date being changed to July the 11th, which is on a Thursday. All right, those in favor, Yonke,
Aye.
Frierson,
Aye.
Johnson. That's right. Duffy,
Aye.
Metz,
Aye.
Durant,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Sirks,
Aye.
Grady.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes 8-0.
Motion passes. Staff and commissioners, thank you. And let's please make sure Commissioner Johnson, he had to step out.
Yes.
I want to make sure he knows what time to be here in February.
Well, he'll have 2 months to really know, so we'll
right.
we'll make sure we get it to him.
All right, with that, I believe we can move on to item number 9, which is adjournment. The chair asks for a motion and a second for adjournment.
All right.
Second? Motion? Second? I think I made the motion and I seconded it. We'll do hands.
Do we have a second? Who's the second?
Second.
Thank you. Vote of hands. That's everyone.
It's unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you, staff. Thank you.